welcome back to another episode of Logan's Voice. My name is Doug Ballinger, and I am Logan's dad. I'm glad you're here today, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This episode is going to be a little different. It's personal, really personal. I want to talk about how I've turned my pain, this traumatic, deep grief, into something that looks like purpose, into advocacy, into connection, into keeping Logan's memory alive. But let me be clear right out of the gate, this is not a roadmap. I'm not here to tell you what healing should look like. I'm not here to sell you on silver linings or try to spin something beautiful out of a nightmare. I'm just going to share with you my path, the path I'm on. And along the way, I'll talk about something that often gets overlooked in grief conversations. And that's how most men grieve differently than women, and how society doesn't really give us the space to do it out loud. I used to think I had to keep it all together, be strong, be silent, but silence almost swallowed me. And now I talk, I speak, I show up, I say Logan's name because I'm still his dad. So if you're listening because you've lost someone, if your world has shattered and you're still breathing somehow, this one's for you. Maybe my story won't be your story, but maybe, just maybe, it'll help you feel a little less alone as you walk your own path. Let's get into it. The day Logan died, that moment, I'll never forget it. It was my dad who called, and the second I heard his voice, something shifted in me. I just knew something was wrong. And when he said the words, when I heard that Logan was gone, I screamed out loud. The kind of scream that doesn't come from your mouth, it comes from somewhere deep inside you, primal, like your soul is being ripped open. I dropped to the ground right where I was. I didn't care who saw me or where I was supposed to be. I just sat there on the floor trying to make sense of what I had just heard. But there's no making sense of that kind of news. Your child, your baby, gone. And there was nothing I could do to fix it. I sat there in shock, in disbelief, just trying to breathe. The world felt so unreal. Everything was spinning and yet frozen at the same time. I've lived through hard things. I've been tested in life. But nothing prepared me for that phone call. As a man, we're often taught to hold it together, to be strong, to protect, to fix. But there was no fixing this. And I think that's something a lot of people don't talk about, is how men grieve. Some of us fall silent. Some of us scream. Some of us just fall apart behind closed doors because the world keeps expecting us to be the rock. I wasn't a rock that day. I was shattered. And in the days that followed, I functioned. I made the phone calls. I answered the questions. I went through the motions. But inside I was gutted. I was just trying to survive each moment without collapsing. And I learned quickly. There's before and there's after. On that fateful day, life as I knew it split in two. That day. And everything that came after was lived in the shadow of that scream. If you've lost a child or anyone you love deeply, you know exactly what I mean. You don't go back to where you were. You can't. But somehow, through the numbness, the noise, and the unbearable quiet, you learn to breathe again. find a way to carry it. And in time, maybe, just maybe, you find a way to speak. After Logan died, the world didn't just feel empty, it felt quiet. Not just the kind of quiet where people don't know what to say, but the quiet that seeps into your bones. And as a man, a father, I quickly noticed something. People weren't really asking how I was. They were asking if I was holding up. You're saying strong, right? You've got to be the rock in your family. You're doing better than I expected. I don't think they meant any harm, but I do think they expected me to be stoic, composed, in control, because that's what men are taught to be. We grow up hearing things like, man up, boys don't cry, don't be so emotional, be strong. So what happens when a man loses his child? Where is he supposed to put that kind of pain? I'll tell you what I did. I shoved it down deep for a while. I thought, I've got to keep moving. I've got to stay busy. I have to show people that I'm okay, even if I'm not. The very next day, we went on a camping trip because that was normal. And here's the truth. Silence is a trap. It convinces us we're being strong by not talking, by not crying, by not breaking down. But really, we're just bottling it up, and that pressure builds. I've talked to other dads since losing Logan, and I see the same pattern over and over. The quiet suffering, the way we isolate, the way we feel like we have to be there for everyone else, even when we're falling apart inside. Grief doesn't make you weak. Crying doesn't make you soft. Saying, I miss my child so much it physically hurts, doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And for men especially, we need to hear that more often. We need safe spaces to talk about this pain. We need community. We need to hear other guys say, yeah, me too. I'm grateful that I've found people, some through Hope Movement Coalition, others through this podcast, who get it. People who don't look at me sideways when I say, I still talk about Logan every day. Or when I say there are mornings I wake up and forget for a second that he's gone. And then I remember. Grieving as a father is lonely. It's a type of pain that's often dismissed or overlooked or misunderstood. But I'm here to tell you, if you're a dad listening to this, or a brother, or a grandfather, or a man who has lost your love, your grief matters. You don't have to grieve like anyone else. You don't have to be silent. And you damn sure don't have to carry it all alone. Talking about Logan, saying his name, sharing our story has been part of my healing. Not because it makes the pain go away, but it keeps me connected to him. And because it breaks the silence. So if you're stuck in that silence, I want you to know there is a way out. It starts with saying, I am not okay. And that's not weakness. That's courage. After Logan died, I went through the motions for a while. I'd wake up, survive the day, go to bed, repeat. On some level, I was trying to keep things as normalized as possible. And like I said earlier, as a man, especially a grieving father, I didn't feel like there was much space for me to be anything but functional. People checked in, but it was surface level stuff. Most folks don't know what to say to a man who's lost his son. And honestly, I don't know what to say either. I didn't have the words, I didn't have the energy, I didn't even really have the will to keep putting one foot in front of the other, but I did. And somewhere in the middle of that fog, something small started to stir. It was not a light bulb moment or some big emotional breakthrough. It was just whispers in my gut that said, "You have to say his name." And so I did. Quietly at first, I would talk to Logan in my head. I'd say his name out loud when I was alone. I'd look at his picture and tell him how much I missed him. And you know what? That simple act, just saying his name, began to shift something in me. And because silence might keep you together, but it also keeps the pain buried. And for me, that buried pain started to rot from the inside. I needed release. That's when the idea of telling his story came to me. Not just some big campaign, not as a polished podcast or a published book, just me trying to make sense of this nightmare by writing it down. And then people started to listen and respond. Other dads reached out, grieving fathers who had also been told to be strong and suck it up, to move on. And in their voices, I heard echoes of my own pain, my own silence, and my own questions. That's when I realized this wasn't just about Logan anymore. This was about all the sons and daughters lost to this crisis. It was about the dads carrying their grief in the dark, afraid to say it out loud because no one gave them permission. So I gave myself permission, and eventually I started using my voice. I started attending and speaking events, getting involved with Hope Movement Coalition, sitting across from other grieving families saying, "I see you, I know, me too." That spark, that need to do something, became my lifeline. Not because it took away the pain, not because it fixed anything, because it gave my grief somewhere to go. I couldn't save Logan, but maybe I could help another dad not feel so alone. Maybe I could make it a little harder for someone else's child to get poisoned by fentanyl. Maybe I could turn my pain into something that meant something. That's how the spark of purpose began for me. Not with answers, not with strength, and not with some grand plan. Just a whisper, a name, a broken heart, and the decision to stop being silent. If you had told me in those early days that I'd someday be having my own podcast talking about my son's death, I would have looked at you like you were out of your mind. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to be seen, and I didn't want to share my grief. I just wanted to survive it. And as a man, surviving usually means staying quiet, keeping your head down, and dealing with it on your own. But silence doesn't heal grief. It just buries it. And buried grief, it festers. It shows up in ways you don't expect. In your body, in your relationships, your sleep, deep in your soul. I realized something powerful when I finally let my story come to the surface. Grief has a voice, and it's not always loud or polished or pretty. Sometimes it's trembling, sometimes it's raw, sometimes it comes out as a whisper. But it needs to be heard. For me, That voice became storytelling. I started writing, speaking, creating, telling Logan's story, not just to honor him, but to survive myself. I shared pieces of our journey on social media. I connected with other grieving dads. I stood in front of rooms full of strangers and told them what fentanyl did to my family. And every time I did, I felt Logan right there beside me. I could feel his spirit right in the room. And I could feel something else too, relief. Not relief from grief, but relief from the loneliness that came with carrying it all by myself. Because every time I told our story, someone came up afterwards and said, "Me too." Another dad, another grandpa, a brother, a friend, a man who had been carrying his pain in silence because no one ever gave him space to say, "This happened to me too." That's when I knew this podcast, this mission, my book, Logan's Story, this path I'm on is not just for Logan. It's for all of us who lost someone and felt like we had to grieve behind closed doors. It's for men who've been told to get over it, to toughen up, to move on. I'm not moving on. I'm moving forward with Logan in my heart and his story in my voice. That's what Logan's voice means. It means I keep talking even when it's hard. It means I show up even when I'd rather hide. It means I use the strength I have left to make noise about the things that matter, like fentanyl awareness, ending the stigma around substance use, and reminding grieving dads that we matter too. I didn't choose this path, but I choose what I do with it. And I choose to tell the truth because stories help save lives. Because silence doesn't honor Logan, but speaking up does. Now, I didn't set out to be an advocate. I didn't wake up one day and say, "I want to talk about fentanyl or addiction or grief." Hell, I didn't want to talk to anyone. But life doesn't always give you a choice. Sometimes it grabs you by the collar, drags you through the darkest places, and dares you to speak up or just be swallowed whole. In those early days, I was just trying to breathe, to function, to survive. But little by little, I started putting into words what I was feeling. I'd write things down, share stories, post memories of Logan, funny ones, painful ones, real ones, and people responded. They said, "Thank you for saying this. This helped me. I thought I was the only one." There are so many of us out here grieving in silence. Parents, siblings, friends, all of us shattered by this epidemic. All of us carrying the same questions, the same anger, and the same love for somebody we can't bring back. So I started showing up for Logan, for others, and for myself. Attending awareness events. I joined conversations about overdose and fentanyl poisoning. I listened, I learned, and I cried with strangers. I stood beside other grieving parents, and in all that pain, I found something unexpected. I found connection. Advocacy became a form of survival. It gave my grief something to do, something to build, instead of something that only destroyed. Because here's the thing, grief, like this, it doesn't just go away. But when I tell you Logan's story, when I speak his name, when I fight to end the stigma and push for awareness, I feel like he's right there with me. Like I'm still being his dad. And that matters. This isn't a roadmap. I don't have a 5 step plan to healing. What I have is my path, a messy, imperfect, painfully honest journey of turning trauma into action, of letting my broken heart still beat for something bigger. I lost my son, but I refuse to lose my voice. I am Logan's voice now, and I won't be silent. People sometimes say to me, "You're so strong," or "I don't know how you do it." The truth is, I don't always feel strong. I know that I draw strength from a power greater than I am. And some days I don't do it well. I don't do it well at all. Grief isn't something you conquer, it's something you learn to carry. Some days it feels like a backpack, other days it feels like an anchor. But I've learned what helps me keep going and what doesn't. Advocacy keeps me connected. It gives my pain somewhere to land. But it's not just the rallies or the podcast episodes or the book Logan's Story or t shirts, coffee cups. It's the quiet choices I make every day to protect my mental health, to honor Logan and myself. It's walking outside with my dog. It's sitting in stillness and letting the tears come when they need to. It's being in nature. It's surrounding myself with people who get it, especially other fathers, other men who've been through this fire and are still standing, scared but unbroken. And sometimes it's just stepping away, logging off, saying no, and giving myself permission to just be a grieving dad, not a speaker, not a fighter, not a face for a cause, but a man missing his son. Men, we need that space. We need to give each other permission to grieve without shame, to talk about our kids, to cry, to say their name, and to feel the weight and not shove it down because it doesn't fit in some outdated mold of masculinity. I've met dads who haven't spoken their child's name out loud in some time. And when they do, when they finally do, they crumble. Not because they're weak, but because they've held in something no human being should ever have to hold alone. So here's what I've learned. Healing doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means the pain has somewhere to go, somewhere it can become something meaningful. A conversation, a connection, a message that says you are not alone. That's why I keep telling Logan's story. Because every person who hears it, maybe, just maybe, one heart softens, one mind opens, and one life is saved. And maybe I find a little more healing in it as well. I never wanted this mission. I didn't ask for it. But I would trade it all in a heartbeat just to have Logan back. But that's not the hand I was dealt. So now I use what I have, my voice, my pain, my story, to fight for others, to warn, to educate, to connect, to humanize the kids behind the statistics, the families behind the headlines, the dads like me who are having to learn how to live in a world that no longer makes sense. This crisis, the fentanyl epidemic, isn't slowing down. And if you think it can't touch your family, I'm here to tell you it can. It touched mine. And that's why I talk about it. not to scare people, but to wake them up. We've got to stop whispering about addiction like it's a character flaw. We've got to stop judging grief, especially men's grief, like there's a right or wrong way to do it. We've got to stop letting shame silence us. Stigma will tear you apart, not just about addiction. There's stigma about so many things. There's stigma about how men grieve. And we've got to start having real conversations with our kids, our partners, our communities. Conversations that can save lives. Conversations I wish I'd have had earlier on with Logan. I can't go back and change that, but I can use my story to reach someone else's son, someone else's daughter, or maybe even yours. I don't have all the answers. I'm not an expert. I'm just a dad who has lost a child and refused to stay quiet about it. I'm learning every day. I'm on a journey. So if you're walking this path too, if you've lost someone or you're trying to help someone survive, know this. You are not alone. You matter. Your story matters. Your grief matters. And your voice could be someone's lifeline. This podcast, Logan's Voice, is more than a tribute. It's a promise. A promise that I'll keep showing up, that I'll keep telling the truth, and that I'll keep pushing for change. Because silence didn't save my son, but maybe, just maybe, our voices can help save someone else's. If you've made it this far in today's episode, I want to thank you for spending this time with me today. If anything I said resonated with you, if you've ever felt the weight of grief, the sting of silence, or the fire of purpose rising from pain, know you're not walking this road alone. This podcast is a piece of my healing. It's how I stay connected to Logan. It's how I turn my heartache into hope. And I hope it gives you a place to breathe, to feel, or maybe even find your own voice in all this. I want to ask you, please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, especially the dads out there. A friend, a parent, a partner, a teacher, anyone who's been touched by addiction, loss, or the long road of grief. Because we don't talk about this enough, and silence costs lives. And now I have some exciting news to share. Our book, Logan's Story, will be published very soon. It's raw, it's honest, and it's filled with love. It's not just about how Logan died. It's about how he lived. It's about the lessons we've learned, the things we wish we'd have known, and the truth behind this crisis we're all facing. Keep an eye out. I'll be announcing the release date and how you can get a copy. If you believe in this mission, I hope you help me get it into as many hands as possible. Until next time, take care of yourself, give yourself grace, and talk about the hard stuff. And remember, I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not remain silent.